Welcome to the kitchen, which is where I love to talk about Halloween Horror Nights to anybody that wants to or usually doesn't want to listen. So, if you missed it, I counted down my top 5 worst Halloween Horror Nights moments of all time. And since we do not get to have Halloween Horror Nights this year, I really am going to be spending a lot of time looking back. So instead of focusing on the negative, I'm going to be moving into the positive on this video. I have had some of my favorite memories of my entire life at this event. So narrowing it down to my top 5 was very, very hard, but also really, really fun because thinking back about Halloween Horror Nights is one of my favorite activities. And I'll be doing a lot of that this year, I'm sure, without it in my life. But without further ado, here are my top 5 best Halloween Horror Nights moments of all time. Once again, I'm counting down from 5 to 1. So with number 5, oh my God, this one was amazing. One year that I went to Halloween Horror Nights, I believe it's 2014, I met Mike Aiello, who was the creative director at Universal Studios and for Halloween Horror Nights at the time. I know he has since moved on to their other theme park and still works for Universal, but this was when he was like big into the event. I looked up and saw him standing outside of what was like the disaster area and at that scare zone at the time, and I just was like, because that's like one of my idols. He was the person behind a lot of my favorite event of the year, and like that was like seeing Jesus to me. Like seeing the person responsible for the thing I loved the most was like mind-blowing. So my friends and I went up and we were just like very polite, and I got to speak to him and just tell him that I really appreciated the event and got a picture and was in shock for like the rest of the evening because like that's one of my heroes, and they say don't meet your heroes, but he's so nice and he's so chill, and I just really respect him a lot as a person. So to get to meet somebody that like is an idol, that made that night like so special. That's in my favorite nights I've ever been. Number 4, and anybody that didn't like this house can fight me because it has a special place in my house. The 4th best moment I've ever had at Horror Nights was when I got to step into the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. The Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time, like top 5 favorite movies, easily. It's my favorite scary movie, even though some people argue it's not that scary. And while it doesn't scare me, I still really love it. I think it is brilliant and amazing, and it was one of my number 1 wants, like one of my biggest dreams to come to the event for years. And for a long time, that did not look like it was possible because of Stephen King not really wanting his works to be represented at events like this. But the loophole was, it wasn't Stephen King's The Shining, it was Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, so the movie was fair game. Literally, this was a dream come true. I had had recurring dreams about getting to go in a Halloween Horror Nights house that was themed to The Shining. And then, once they announced it, I kept having recurring dreams about it even more. Even a nightmare where I went in on opening night and they were still building the house and it sucked. That was a real nightmare for me. But the minute I got to walk in and I got to see the characters, I got to see Mr. Halloran and Jack and Wendy and the Grady sisters and Danny and the bathroom scene and the way that they did the Here's Johnny with the door, it was amazing. And the way they did the elevator blood scene, my God, I didn't know how they were going to do that, but it was perfect. And getting to go in and see Lloyd and Hera, the dog that bit me. Lloyd, been away, but now I'm back. I feel like I quote The Shining way too much and it's like a problem for everyone around me. But I digress. This house, to me, it was perfect. I know some people said it wasn't good enough, it didn't feel grand enough, but I don't have that complaint. I did this house so many times. I cried a few times. I cried the first time I went into it because it was just a big moment for me. I was ready. I had never wanted anything more up until that point at the event, and I'm glad that I got to have it. Number 3, this was a big bucket list thing for me that I got to do last year, and it was so worth it. In one year I want to do the 6 house tour, but I got to do Unmasking the Horror, and as a Horror Nights nerd, I feel like it's a rite of passage to get to do Unmasking the Horror. I love going into the haunted houses when they're functional and they're up and running and all of that. I have always wanted to just let me walk in with the lights on so I can appreciate all these details, because there's so many things that just the general public that goes in misses. And that's why I love going in the houses more than once to pick up on all of this. Because I feel like the first time you go through, you're so overwhelmed, and then you want to go in subsequent times so you can look around and see all of these amazing details, pick up on the storyline, because a lot of heart and soul goes into making these. And I just have nothing but praise to the people that work on this, the art and design team and everybody that brings this event to life. If I could do that for a living, I would want to. I went to school for theater, so I think that's why I have such a big like affinity for that, because this to me is a big theatrical production, and I love like the costumes and the lights and the sets. It's so perfect. It's like getting to walk into a movie or getting to walk into like the set of this really grand play. So I got to go last year. I got to go in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Graveyard Games, and Universal Monsters, which were amazing to go through. It gave me a whole new appreciation. I think the Monsters one was probably my favorite because all of the details that I didn't catch, like how each transition room like had a detail about the upcoming room. Like, for example, at the end of the Phantom, there was the chandelier and the electricity brought you into the Frankenstein's lab where the electricity was really present. And just like things like that that you don't even think about, that the people that design this think about. And it just, oh, it made my heart melt. I really wanted to do the 6 house one someday. I was thinking about doing it this year, but obviously there is no Horror Nights. But one day I will get to, because God, I love that. It was just amazing. And one of my favorite pictures is me like standing outside of the Universal Monsters house under that logo. It's like, I'm finally here. I finally did it. I got to go on the behind the scenes tour. Number 2, one of my favorite things in the entire world is getting to share Halloween Horror Nights with others. I love going with my friends. I had a group of friends that I went with pretty much for the first time. A few of them had been in years past, but weren't like as rabid about it. And then several years had passed since then. And then we were all older and could appreciate it for what it was more. So really, when I started going with my friends, it was like we all started together, even though, like I said, some of them had been previously. So we kind of like had that bond. We all had like the inside jokes and all the memories and everything. But around 2014, I just kind of mentioned in passing, because I was going back with my mom after opening weekend. It's like, do you want to go to Halloween Horror Nights? And she did. And ever since then, my mom has gone with me every year. She really appreciates that. And getting to take my mom into a house for the first time, getting to take other people I've taken into houses for the first time is one of my favorite memories. And that's why it's my number 2 spot. My mom's first house was Alien vs. Predator. My dad's first house was Saws and Steam. I took my cousin into Dead Waters for the first time. Taking one of my other friends into Universal Monsters last year for the first time. I live for that. I love seeing the look on someone's face, because maybe it's just me. When I first started going, I was expecting like, I don't know, like a local haunt type quality thing. So when I walked in and saw just like the grand scale of this event, it blew my mind. And getting to see that look on other people's faces has brought me just immense joy. And getting to share somebody's first house, first year, getting to hear somebody talk like fondly about a year that I was there. Like, I love that. I love bringing people. I love sharing something I love with people that are important to me. And everybody that I've taken also has an appreciation for it. Another time that I really enjoyed taking people, 2 of my friends had been before, and I think one of them had been in one haunted house, closed her eyes and screamed the whole time. She said she hates haunted houses, didn't want to do it. Another one of my friends wouldn't go in any of the houses that the year that she went before she went with me. I took them. My motto is grab my backpack, it'll be fine, hold on. And I was kind of like, as they said, their spirit guide through it. I was able to turn 2 people that said they hated haunted houses into people that were appreciating what was going on. And that is like one of my biggest achievements. They even said, they were like, you need to do this for money. It's like, I wish I could. But I love letting, like, I love when people, like, when it clicks. Whenever like they finally are like, oh, I get it. So that means a lot to me. I feel like I'm just being really sappy this whole video. Finally, my number 1 favorite moment I've ever had at Halloween Horror Nights so far. I have a lot of like, it's really hard because I know some of these things that I've picked have been just like vague things, like vague experiences, like Unmasking the Horror or bringing people for the first time. But I really got to thinking about specific instances I've had in haunted houses. I have had times when I've had fantastic scares that have been so memorable, and that's a whole separate list. I could do like my top 10 best scares of all time. But I really got to thinking about certain instances and certain experiences. And one of my things I've always enjoyed is when you get that rare solo run in a house. I have only had this happen a few times. I had it happen in 2011 with the orphanage because we ran to the back of the park right when it opened. and we had the whole house to ourselves. So much so that we did get disoriented and kind of lost in this house. One time in Havoc Derailed, same thing, no other people around us. We lost half of our group because I ended up like running into a wall or like something in front of my face, the SIF. And I really like that. It brings a whole new level of like fear and like, oh no, I'm really alone in this whatever universe of the house that you're in. I feel like as the years have gone on, the opportunity for solo runs has gone down. And that's true because they do kind of push a lot of people through at the same time. And, you know, that's an argument for another day, whether or not that's like a good way to experience the haunted house. And it's very hit or miss with timing of scares. But I was fortunate enough last year at Halloween Horror Nights 2019 to have another solo run experience. We had done 9 houses. I went down with some friends. One person in particular that I had never been to the event with, who had only been like one other time ever. And I really was hoping we could go in all of the houses. My friends were kind of getting tired. We were like, well, we don't really want to go all the way to the back of the park to do House of a Thousand Corpses. Is everybody cool with skipping that one? And I was okay with it. I would have lived. I know he would have lived and been okay with it. But it was just like so important. We'd come that far and I really wanted him to do all the houses. So we saw on the sign at the front of the park that the wait was like, it was like a walk on. It was 5 minutes. This was like right around closing too. We ran all the way to the back of the park. I remember like hustling back like down by the water where the show is, like down there. Like I was like, it's a shortcut. We were running. Walked right into the house. Nobody else around us. Every scare, every moment, it was like the most picture perfect run I have ever had in a haunted house ever. And the funny thing is, and this always happens, it was the house I was the least excited for that year. It ended up being like my second favorite overall of the year. And that solo run is why. We had the best time. And like I was so exhausted from like running, but we came out of that house like that was so worth it. Like I would not have traded that for the world. And I just look back fondly. That's like a great memory with like one of my favorite people in the entire world. So that it was like something out of a movie. I really can't like put into words how special that moment was, but it was. Did all 10 houses, ended the night with a perfect run. Like what could be better than that? There you go. That's my top 5 best Halloween Horror Nights moments of all time. So in the months without Halloween Horror Nights, unfortunately, I'm going to be doing a lot of reflecting back. I actually have an idea for something that I have never ranked before that might be very, very tricky for me. So look for that coming up. But it's just going to be, this year is going to be a walk back down memory lane because I'm going to be struggling without this event. I'm sure other people are going to be struggling, but it's just going to make me more excited for when we see Halloween Horror Nights again. So see you all again.